The Little Library by Margaret McNamara and G. Brian Karras. One breezy spring afternoon, Mr. Tiffin told his class, "Our new library is finally open. Time to meet the new librarian." "I'm excited," said Jeremy. "Me too," said Charlie and Alex together. "Me three," said Molly. "I could stay here and sharpen pencils," said Jake. Jake was a slow and careful reader. Sometimes he read the same page more than once so he could figure everything out. When it came to library day, Jake felt left behind. The new library smelled like fresh paint and wood. "Welcome, everybody," said a friendly-looking person. "I'm Beck Good. Please call me Librarian Beck. I'm here to help you find books to love." "When you open a book, you open your mind," Eleanor announced. "When you open a book?" said Jake. "Why don't you explore the library for a while?" said Librarian Beck. "That will help me get to know you." Kimmy headed to the science section. Alex and Charlie hunted for a story they could read together. Tara found the art books and looked for paintings by women. Jake wandered over to a corner shelf. He studied the bookcase to see how the pieces fit together. He ran his finger along the grooves in the wood. After a while, Librarian Beck came to talk to him. "See what you think of this," they said. Librarian Beck put a heavy book into Jake's hands. It was old and worn. "Woodworking for Young Hands," read Jake. He opened the book. The first pages were filled with drawings of tools. Jake already knew the names of some of them. "That one's an owl," he said. "My Gramps has a workshop." Jake handed the book back to them. "This has a lot of pictures," he said, "so it doesn't count as reading." "Says who?" said Librarian Beck. "A lot of people," said Jake. "Not me," said Librarian Beck. Jake checked the book out. He let it sit for a while when he got home. He had other things to do. After a few days, he read the instructions for the first project and the second. They didn't make a lot of sense to him. The next library day, Jake's book was due back. Slowly, he handed it over. "The instructions are pretty hard." "But it looks like you took some good notes," said Librarian Beck. "Want to keep it for another week?" "Sure," said Jake. Jake spent the next week reading more of the book, still slowly. The more he read, the more curious he became about things made of wood. He looked at the way the three legs of a stool supported the seat. He noticed that some tables had sharp corners and some were round. He wondered how to bend wood to make the back of a chair. The next 3 library days, Jake renewed Woodworking for Young Hands. Librarian Beck found other books they thought Jake would like, and Jake checked those out too. One warm, sunny morning, Librarian Beck had an announcement to make. "All library books need to be returned before the end of school," they said. "That way the library will be organized and ready when you come back next year." "Wait," Jake said. "The library is closed all summer?" "Of course it is," said Robert. Jake looked down at Woodworking for Young Hands. He hadn't realized he'd have to give it back so soon. That night, Jake had an idea. He turned to a page he had marked in the book. Then he looked around his house. He found a yardstick, a screwdriver, and some 3-inch screws. Then he called Gramps. Over the next 2 weekends, Jake spent a lot of time in Gramps' workshop. Jake measured and marked plywood. Gramps cut along the lines Jake made. Gramps drilled holes. Jake screwed in screws. Jake attached hinges, affixed plexiglass, and painted. Gramps and Jake didn't talk a lot while they worked. They didn't need to. At last, they were done. On the last library day of the year, Jake brought something very big and very heavy into Mr. Tiffin's classroom. It was covered with a large cloth. "It's for Librarian Beck," he said. Everyone in the class tried to guess what Jake had made. "Looks like a giant bird cage," said Charlie. "It's better than a bird cage," said Jake. "A dollhouse?" asked Alex. "Nope," said Jake. Tara and Jeremy helped carry Jake's surprise into the library. Jake pulled off the cloth. "It's a little library," said Jake. "You built that?" asked Jeremy. "With the help from Woodworking for Young Hands," Jake said, "and my Gramps." "What's a little library?" asked Kimmy. "A little library is a place to share books," said Mr. Tiffin. "People take a book out and bring it back, or they replace it with another book," he said, "all for free. So while our big library is closed, this little library can stay open," said Jake. On the very last day of school, after the class had scrubbed the desks and taken out the trash and written in the memory book, Mr. Tiffin led them outside. There was Librarian Beck with the school custodian. They were standing next to the little library. "I filled it with books," said Librarian Beck. "Want to take one out, Jake?" they asked. "That's okay," said Jake. "I'm going to wait till I can check out Woodworking for Young Hands again next year." All that summer, Jake's little library stayed busy. People put all kinds of books in and took all kinds of books out. One hot day in July, a package arrived for Jake. He tore open the brown paper. Inside was Woodworking for Young Hands. On the first page, he saw this: "Withdrawn." Then he saw a note. "Dear Jake, you loved this book more than anyone had loved it in a long time. Withdrawn means this book does not belong to the library anymore. It belongs to you. See you next year and keep reading. Librarian Beck." The end. Little Free Libraries by Jake. It turns out there are thousands of libraries like the one I made, all over the country and all over the world. They're called Little Free Libraries, and if you want to find out more about them, you can go to littlefreelibraries.org. You'll see a ton of information about starting a Little Free Library, from choosing a good spot to asking a grown-up to help keep the library going. You can order a kit from the Little Free Library website, or you can download plans to work from. Your Little Free Library can even appear on an interactive map of the world. The end.